recognized.
Are we in a quorum call, Mr. President?
We are not.
We are not. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Vladimir Putin has continued to wage horrific war against Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. This invasion waged upon the profits of Russia's oil and gas empire has caused destruction and devastation beyond measure. We must denounce Putin's war of choice, but we must call out profiteering and the ricochet effects of that conflict that affects Americans and others across the world. This connection to conflict is only possible as a result of the fallacy of American energy independence from oil and gas extraction, a lie that has been sold by the American Petroleum Institute, or the American Prevarication Institute, as they should be called. For years, the oil and gas industry has sold Americans more snake oil than actual oil, promising security and safety in exchange for unlimited drilling, unlimited exports, unlimited profits for big oil and big gas in the United States. And after yet another year of price spikes caused by Putin and profiteering, it is time to say enough is enough with these false promises and crocodile tears from the American Petroleum Institute, from ExxonMobil, from Chevron, from all of these companies. President Biden was right to follow My Spigot Act and the bipartisan consensus in the House and Senate to ban all oil imports from Russia. The only way to end Putin's oil and gas-funded wars is to cut off his oil and gas-funded piggy bank, which comes, unfortunately, historically, from American consumers at the pump, buying Russian oil for their cars. That has to end. And thankfully, President Biden has now made that decision. And it's because we have a moral moment here to provide all possible humanitarian aid to the Ukrainian people. We have a moral moment here to cut off the money pipeline that is funding the missiles and the tanks that are destroying the homes of innocent people in Ukraine. And we have a moral moment that ensures that we take the action to build a better world that is safe from climate change-fueled crisis. But our ability to meet this moral moment hinges on what we do next on the floor of the United States Senate. What action we take to respond to this obvious crisis that we have on the planet, all related to this oil and gas-fueled military invasion of Ukraine. The tanks, the planes, the soldiers, all paid for by oil and gas money. We could fail to meet this moral moment by accepting the bad faith arguments from big oil, which is using this horrifying invasion to push for more drilling, and money to fossil fuel companies, and more lands and waters lost to extraction, and more profit for big oil at the expense of American pocketbooks. Or we can meet the moral moment if the United States is willing to lead with innovation, moving away from global oil chaos and closer to clean, cheap, domestic, renewable energy sources that will not fall victim to price hikes from despots, dictators, and criminals overseas. Now, we've all heard the big lie from big oil, Fox News, and the GOP, the Gas and Oil Party. Their message is, all you need to do is give us a few more leases, cut a few more regulations, provide us with a few more subsidies, and then we'll be on our way to energy independence. Trust the oil and gas companies, they say. And Fox News says, yes, trust the oil and gas industry. But that argument is leakier than an old oil tanker. And it's been proven again and again. If big oil wanted to make us energy independent, they would have already done it. Instead, they resort to their big lie. So here are the facts. Big oil is sitting on 11,000 unused oil and gas leases. 9,000 of those leases are on federal lands in the United States. They've already been purchased by the oil and gas industry, mostly for $2 an acre, but they've got them. And 2,000 leases offshore in the waters of the United States. And they've all been already approved for drilling. Big Oil also has 6,000 partially drilled wells that they can use to drill right now. In other words, they've already done the drilling, and they're still not going there right now on an emergency basis to produce that additional oil and gas. And why is that? Because rather than using the resources they already have to drill, they are using this crisis as an excuse to get more leases, more wells, more profit for themselves, while squatting on the existing leases they already have that could produce the additional oil and gas that they say they want to produce. But of course, they don't want to produce that oil, or else they would be doing it already. They just want more leases that they can sit on and profit from in the years ahead. But in terms of solving this crisis that we have right now, they can do it if they want, but they don't want to, because it might actually drive down the price of oil, might drive down the price of natural gas if they produce more here. So this is not a problem of governmental overreach. If you don't trust me on this, how about trusting the oil executives themselves? In a recent survey, 60% of oil executives said investors are keeping them from drilling. Just 10% pointed to regulations. These are the oil company executives. They say it's the investors, the millionaires in their company, who don't want to drill, not federal regulations. And remember Keystone Pipeline? The pipeline that Republicans wanted so they can be energy independent. In 2015, every single Republican on the floor of the United States Senate voted against my amendment to ban the exports of that oil from the Keystone Pipeline. They kept saying then it will lead to energy independence. And when I said, fine, let's have an amendment that says it cannot be exported, every single Republican voted no, allow it to be exported out of our country. These crocodile tears from the Republican Party, from the GOP, Gas and Oil Party, it's just so predictable, and it comes back every single time. Big Oil has kept up their export shenanigans. In 2021, we exported 8.6 million barrels a day of oil while importing 8.4 million barrels per day. Last year, we imported, on average, 600,000 barrels of oil a day from Russia. At the same time, we exported the same amount to China. That's what the Republican Party and the gas and oil industry got in 2015 when we lifted the ban on the export of American oil. That's not energy independence, it's profit dependence of the American people on the agenda of big oil and big gas. The Gas and Oil Party doesn't want to drill for oil here in America to protect Americans from economic harm. They want to do it for their own economic benefit. Big oil has a need for greed. The Republican Party, we've just heard in the confirmation hearing, they keep talking about crime in the streets. No, the big problem is crime in the suites, crime in the oil and gas executive suites of our country, and the Republican Party inability to stand up to them so that we have true energy independence in our country. And in 2021, while consumers sacrificed at the pump with gas prices increasing by 50%, Big Oil made over, get this number, $200 billion in profits. That's what's happening. That's why they don't want to drill, because the price of oil might come down and therefore their profits might come down. But they've got all the leases they need right now. This isn't about energy supply for consumers. It's about big oil's demand for profits for their shareholders and for their executives. That's what the agenda of the oil and gas industry in America is all about. Not American security, not American consumers, not American environmental and healthcare issues, but the profits of their executives. We don't need sacrifice in our country. We need innovation. We need a way to ensure that we unleash all of the potential which we have in our country in order to tap into all of our rich natural resources. So instead of supporting energy independence and getting out of the way of a real domestic clean energy boom, big oil would rather force consumers to sacrifice with high prices at the gas pump. We don't need American sacrifice by paying high gas prices. Instead, we need to innovate and install clean energy solutions. This is our short-term and our long-term solution to price disruptions, climate chaos, environmental injustice, and wars paid for with oil and gas profits, much of it war profiteering. And here are some more facts. In an additional 16 million electric vehicles on the road would replace all of the oil that we currently import from Russia. Let me say that again. If we just deploy 16 million all-electric vehicles, we back out all the oil from Russia. The next 16 million all-electric vehicles would back out all the Saudi oil that we import into the United States. EVs just doesn't stand for electric vehicles. It also stands for ending violence, getting the United States tied up into situations around the world because of all the money that these wealthy oil states get from the United States. So here's another way to break it down. We can put 5 million electric vehicles on the road, 5 million heat pumps in homes, and replace 75% of our public bus fleet with electric buses and still back out all the oil we import from Russia. In the time it would take to implement these measures, we can release already congressionally mandated sales of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to give consumers relief at the gas pump. We can accomplish all of this by passing my Save Consumers Act with Senator Heinrich, which would grant the president additional authority to implement energy efficiency standards and release another 265 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve by the end of 2023. We can do this. We can deploy the Strategic Petroleum right now, invest in a renewable, clean energy agenda, and actually produce enough energy that substitutes for all the Russian oil, and do so in a very brief period of time. But we have to commit to destroying the demand by Putin's dirty energy business model by powering our own country with clean, American-made, renewable energy. We can power our way to peace. We can power our way to stopping the most dangerous effects of greenhouse gases, creating climate change on our planet. So Putin banked on divisions in the West. What he found instead is our complete solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Imagine if we were to channel that same spirit of unity to unlock a safe, healthy future and untether ourselves from Putin's dirty profits. We should agree that no country continues to have a veto on our energy security or of our friends and allies. The future lies not in the extractive fossil fuels of the Industrial Revolution, but technologies that will power the clean energy revolution. It is in our interest to build a well-trained, well-paid battalion of American union workers to lead countries to look to their energy needs from the red, white, and blue of the United States instead of Putin's cronies who finance Russia's repression at home and adventurism abroad. By passing a $555 billion investment in clean energy and climate justice, we can build a made-in-America clean economy that delivers real energy independence for our country, and we can export those technologies around the world. With tax credits and rebates in wind and solar, all-electric vehicles, offshore wind, battery storage technologies, heat pumps, advanced domestic manufacturing, we can cut costs at home while cutting off Putin's money line from oil and natural gas. These investments would reduce our dependence on global oil markets and instead power our country through localized clean energy. The solar from our deserts, the solar power from those states that have near year-round sun, the wind off of our coast from Massachusetts down to Maryland, where the presiding officer represents, the wind off of the West Coast, the hydropower from our southeast, the geothermal from our northwest, all of it can be tapped. And we can end an era where our country is held hostage by the need to import more oil. Our federal climate policies are exactly what we need. This national security moment, this environmental movement, this healthcare moment, this moral moment for our country and for the planet. There is no quick solution to this quagmire that big oil has drilled the United States into. There are only better and worse solutions, moral and immoral solutions. We can innovate and install clean energy that produces all of the energy which we need and protects us, protects our allies, protects our planet at the very same time. Or we can continue down the pathway of false promises and profiteering. It is our moral moment. Let's stand in solidarity with those affected by oil and gas wars and seize this chance for a cleaner, safer, more affordable future for Americans, for our allies, and for the world. And there are doubters that we can make this transition. People who say, well, wind and solar, all electric vehicles, battery storage technologies, that sounds fine, but it just won't solve the problem. Well, they are the same people who said that we could not deploy the spectrum, which I was the author of the bill that accomplished, that made it possible for everyone by 1995 to have a flip phone in their pocket at 10 cents a minute. And then using that very same spectrum, 10 years later, a young guy, Steve Jobs, invented a phone, which is a computer, the same power as the computers on the Apollo mission to the moon. We innovated, we moved, and we can actually see people fleeing Ukraine all holding a smartphone invented in the United States because we put together the policies that change us from black rotary dial phones to these powerful computers in everyone's pockets. We can do the same thing with energy. We can create a revolution. We just have to get big oil and big gas out of the way and allow our young people to innovate, allow our entrepreneurs to innovate, allow for the deployment of all of these technologies, and then children will have to look to the history books to find that there ever was such a crisis that we are living through today. So my hope is that the Senate will respond, that they understand how much of this conflict is created by the globe's dependence upon oil and gas. Putin is proving that to us once again. And if we look at the Middle East, we can see that hole that we have dug for ourselves in our dependence upon that region. We have the solution. It's innovation. It's optimism. It's unleashing the entrepreneurial spirit in our country. That will be the challenge of the United States Senate over the next 2 months. Will we have the same courage to respond, to take on those energy titans in the same way that the Ukraine people every day are giving us the example that we should be following? So with that, Mr. President, I yield back.